Since the dawn of the 42nd millennium and the opening of the Great Rift, many of the Imperium's terrible enemies have only become more fearsome. The demons and gods of chaos have been bolstered and exponentially spread their influence throughout the galaxy, and a psychic awakening shook the universe. But of the Great Rift's many terrible consequences, perhaps the most unsuspected is the re-emergence of an ancient and abominable minor xeno species, the Hogs of Celtic 4. The Hogs are believed to be one of the Old One's later creations as physically stunted precursors to the Crocs. Both physiologically and socially, Hogs and modern-day orcs share many similarities. Firstly, each of them possesses a variable amount of psychic ability, vastly magnified by the presence of others in their species. Secondly, they both possess genetically engineered mixes of fungal and animal biology, although Hogs are clearly more closely aligned with mold than they are with mushrooms, as it is clearly evidenced by their almost melted appearances. Thirdly, Hogs, like orcs, have no concept of sexual dimorphism, though they universally present themselves as female rather than orcs, which present themselves as male. Where Hogs differ from orcs, and likely the reason they were abandoned by the Old Ones to begin with, is their complete lack of physical combat prowess. Where the Crocs were highly efficient blends of stature, physical strength, psychic ability, and reproductive capability, ancient Hogs only possessed the latter too. And even then, their own psychic abilities were frequently volatile and far less refined than the Crocs' Weird Boy equivalents. Moving on from their failure, the Old Ones abandoned their creation on Celtic 4, leaving them to fade into antiquity. And, were it not for the transformation of the realm of souls into the nightmarish Imperium called the Warp, the Hogs very likely would have done so. Unfortunately, with the death of the Old Ones and the birth of the gods of chaos, the Hogs were perfectly set up to evolve into the species they have since become, drawing their sustenance, warcraft and culture entirely from demonic energies. Up until now, Hogkind had lain dormant in their home system, content to torment the medieval-level societies of minor xenos on their planets, and developing technology only insofar as it could be used to harness the power of chaos. But after the opening of the Great Rift, they have been emboldened to strike out at the Imperium and the galaxy at large, finally making their presence known to the Ordo Xenos, and by extension, the Ordo Theoreticus. Given their innate talent for using the powers of the warp, particularly in acts of sorcery, Hog culture has oriented itself entirely around pleasing the three sorceress gods, Tzeentch, Slaanesh, and Nurgle. For obvious reasons, Khorne despises nearly all of Hogkind as vile sorcerers, and they despise him just as well as a foolish and inelegant cosmic brute. In accordance with their devotion to the three sorceress gods, Hogs honor a practice called the Rule of Three, only gathering together in groups of three, called covens led by their most powerful member, called a Nani. Either all three members of the coven are devoted to the same god or to the Chaos Undivided, or they are each devoted to a different god. So while you might find a coven of three Nurgling Hogs, you'll never see a coven with two Tzeentchian Hogs and one Slaaneshi Hog, as such a formation would irk Slaanesh and infuriate Nurgle. Covens are far from the highest tier of Hog social organization, however. Covens will often themselves come together into groups of three, called curses, and the most powerful Nani among them will become the leader, a Granny. One tier above that, groups of three or more curses will in turn come together in groups called Calamities, and the strongest Granny among them will become the leader, a Great Granny. Great Grannies are the only figures in Hog culture allowed to wear the religiously sacred witching hats depicted in their race's symbol. Interestingly enough, Great Grannies are far more likely to draw their sorceress powers from Chaos Undivided than any of the three sorcerer gods. This is likely because it's far easier to draw together a Slaaneshi curse, a Tzeentchian curse, and a Nurgling curse under one banner of a Chaos Undivided curse. Just as vile and intriguing as covens, curses, and calamities are the individual Hogs that compose them. While Hogs may not possess traditional combat roles such as artillery or infantry, they have devised multiple other combat specializations which are as formidable as they are utterly bizarre. As a Hog grows in age and experience, more residual warp energy begins to build up in that Hog's cardiovascular system. To put it in simpler terms, their hearts literally pump chaotic power. Cast Hogs utilize a weapon of chaotic technology called a cast staff to focus this residual power into spellcasting and sorcery. Wielding this weapon, Cast Hogs drastically heighten their powers and drastically lessen the risk of a spell backfiring. Due to the innate simplicity of their abilities and the ease with which a young Hog can learn to use a cast staff, Cast Hogs occupy the most ubiquitous role in Hog society. Much like how Cast Hogs utilize their chaotic hearts to power spellcasting, Broom Hogs utilize the archaic piece of technology called a Lev Broom. This weapon emits a jet of pure warp energy from the frills at its top, allowing it to be used as something like a makeshift flamethrower at close range, or a mountable flying tool that can reach speeds as high as 100 kilometers per hour. Broom Hogs are often the scouts and vanguards of any half-decent Calamity, although it would be inaccurate to say that they are to any degree stealthy. Broom Hogs will streak through the skies of enemy territory, dodging and weaving through the bullets of anti-aircraft weaponry, madly cackling all the while. Scratch Hogs are cybernetic hogs, named for the scratching sound of their metal claws against their tools. While most hogs care little for academic knowledge, choosing to instead dedicate their minds to the study of the esoteric and the arcane, Scratch Hogs are the precise opposite. They care little for sorcery and become obsessed with arithmetic and technology. Scratch Hogs use their talent for the creation of chaos engines to create Yaga Walkers, the Hog's personal answer to transport, housing and military support. Standing on two strange avian legs similar to the Scratch Hog's own cybernetics, they trample across battlefields, launching enchanted rockets as they do so. Yaga Walkers are truly intimidating constructions, able to function as a Hog's base of operations and primary mode of transportation, as well as destructive weapons of warfare, easily able to stand their ground against dreadnoughts and other such war machines. Scratch Hogs are also responsible for the race's interplanetary transportation, although there seems to be no standard for what a Hog ship looks like. As mentioned before, as a Hog ages, her heart becomes further and further infused with energies from the warp. Interestingly enough, after a Hog dies, this residual energy doesn't immediately dissipate, and, when stored correctly, the energy within a Hog's heart can last for centuries. This is where Heartbreakers come in. Heartbreakers stalk the grave remains of Hog battlefields, cutting open and looting the corpses of their fellow Hogs. While they are more obsessively focused on collecting the hearts of powerful Hogs than they are fighting their own battles, Heartbreakers are formidable foes, able to use the stolen hearts as both casting materials and makeshift grenades. Hog mold, when combined with certain chemical materials, can be used to create incredibly potent compounds. Hogs, known as Cauldron keeps, have mastered the art of mixing ingredients together with hog mold to create draughts, explosive materials, fuels, and so on. Additionally, some of the more talented Cauldron keeps can use their cauldrons to grow their own mutated hogs or even to summon demons. Given their wide variety of use, Cauldron keeps are invaluable to covens. Most Hogs cannot count the number of times their life was saved by a potion. Some Hogs devote themselves so wholly to one of the three sorcerer's gods that they unlock new and frightening abilities similar to the Berserkers of Khorne or the Noise Marines of Slaanesh. Unlike the former generalist Hogs, who are often found in evenly divided covens, these Hogs are often found in covens wholly devoted to a single chaos god. These devoted Hogs, much like Cauldron keeps, possess the rare ability to summon their god's demons into the Imperium, often doing so better than even the greatest sorcerers of the Chaos Marine legions. It is said that Great Granny Moldyglove, a devoted Hog of Nurgle, has 3 great unclean ones bound to her service. Banshees. While most Hogs care nothing about their appearances, the Slaaneshi Hogs, known as Banshees, become utterly obsessed with it. They spend their lives collecting gaudy trinkets and clothing in order to adorn themselves, as well as mixing paint to cover their own faces. Ironically enough, this practice only serves to make Banshees look even more uncanny. Nonetheless, when Banshees eventually become convinced that they are truly beautiful, they become filled with a kind of religious fervor and glee, which allows them to sing spells. In truth, what they call singing is an ear-shattering shriek of great length and varying tones. Mold spreaders. The Nurgling Hogs known as mold spreaders fully dedicate themselves to the power of ever-encroaching mold. Like many other servants of Nurgle, they seek out clean and pure worlds untouched by decay or plague and begin to brew their own infectious mold. Some mold spreaders have so mastered this ability that they can effectively transform other races into Hogs by infecting them. Additionally, mold spreaders possess incredible regenerative abilities and can grant these abilities to other Hogs in their covens, for a price of course. Riddlebuers. Like all servants of the trickster god Tzeentch, riddlebuers are vexing foes in their own right. Unlike their fellows who prefer direct attacks via conventional warfare, riddlebuers vastly prefer to cripple their foes via subterfuge. Even in the brief period since the Great Rift has opened, riddlebuers have spent their time psychically tormenting the leaders of dozens of imperial governments, bringing down entire planetary dynasties remotely with endless nightmares and conjurations, both illusory and all too real. Slaughterhounds. Just as with all sorcerers, there is but one kind of Hog that Khorne grants his favor to. Those that use their sorcery to open themselves to demonic possession, becoming vessels for bloodthirsters and the like. For obvious reasons, only the most bitter, antisocial, violent and jaded of Hogs will take this path, as she and the demon will immediately go on an anti-sorcerer killing spree, destroying any Hogs in their sight. Of the hundreds of great grannies making their way into the galaxy under the banner of Hogkind, few have managed to pique the Ordo Theoreticus' interest by surviving more than one extermination attempt. Some, however, have remained a thorn in the Imperium's side for quite some time now. The following is a selection of that particular ilk. Great Granny Singsong and Calamity Screamswarm. Great Granny Singsong is a Slaaneshi broom hag known for the eerie pink glow of a silhouette against the night skies of the worlds her and her Calamity invade. Like all Slaaneshi Hogs, she has the capability to sing her spells, but rather than manifesting as an ear-splitting screech, Great Granny Singsong manifests her magic in an eerie cackle. Calamity Screamswarm is an all-Slaaneshi Calamity, sporting an even mix of broom hags and banshees. They tear across imperial pleasure worlds, stealing any trace of wealth or beauty from the face of the planet and leaving their denizens starving, alone, and likely converted to the worship of Slaanesh. Great Granny Molderglove and Calamity Bubbleburst. Great Granny Molderglove is perhaps one of the most vile and diseased of all Nurgle's children. With a body made of infectious mold, her very presence is enough to asphyxiate a space marine with even the most potent of respirators. Additionally, she has near mastered the art of disease brewing, her cauldron having amassed the highest kill count of any object of its kind. Calamity Bubbleburst is an all-Nurglite calamity made wholly of mold spreaders and cauldron keeps. As mentioned prior, they spent their days brewing sickly concoctions, some of which are so potent that they spontaneously manifest demons into the material realm. Great Granny Headscratcher and Calamity Tramplehome. Great Granny Headscratcher is perhaps the most intelligent hog in the species' history. Fortunately for mankind, however, she is also perhaps one of the most socially inept. While she has driven hundreds of the Imperium's loyal guardsmen to madness with a mere thought and constructed some of the most energy-efficient Yaga walkers the species have ever seen, she is also an incredibly poor public speaker and a worse military leader. Calamity Tramplehome compensates for the Great Granny's failing with sheer technological superiority. Each of the Calamity's 99 curses has at least one Yaga walker to its name, and an army of 99 walkers will win most fights, regardless of military order. The Anis Hog. Paradoxically, the Anis Hog is simultaneously one of the most terrifying creatures that an Imperial agent can come across, and the Imperium's greatest hope for utter annihilation of Hog kind. The Anis Hog, like all Slaughterhounds, is a force of pure demonic violence with bloody rending claws, a glowing red aura, and a hatred for all things witchcraft. While most Slaughterhounds are ended after a single killing spree of a few dozen Hogs, the Anis Hog has become the stuff of nightmares for Hog kind. Hog legend says that she slaughtered an entire Calamity after just one night and collected each of their hearts for later use. Much fearful speculation surrounds what Khorne might direct her to do with these hearts next, once her race has been wiped from the galaxy. Great Granny Threeglares and Calamity Elderai. Great Granny Threeglares is perhaps the de facto leader of all Hog kind, in much the same way that Ghazghkull Maguruk Thraka is the de facto leader of the Orcs. Threeglares is at once feared, loved, respected, and hated by nearly every Great Granny in the galaxy. Even in spite of her own Calamity's size and power, it is speculated that Threeglares will not be satisfied until each Calamity in the galaxy is, at least indirectly, under her command. While little is known about her history, what is known is that Threeglares is a chronic hoarder of chaotic relics and texts, seeking them out wherever she can find them. Her Yaga Walker is lined wall to wall with the spoils of her battles against fellow Calamities, and the Ordo Malleus speculates that she is the explanation for the raidings of dozens of temples and/or sites set up to contain such relics in her territory. Calamity Elderai holds the same kleptomaniacal tendencies as their Great Granny, meaning that to fight against Elderai is to fight the strength of millennia of chaotic history, with many Grannies and Nannies having old chaotic technology in their possession. It is likely that Great Granny Threeglare's greed will either be the cause of her death or the deaths of all Imperial forces she comes across. And after Elderai's first encounter with the Space Marine chapter, which has since been defeated, even after heavy losses to the Hogs, it is quite possible she and her Calamity will prove more of a threat to the Imperium than could ever have been expected. Happy Halloween!